2014. Understand? The starting from 2014, see, I told you we have a common business cycle question every day they ask. The characteristics that can be observed when an economy moves from the bottom to the peak. Same question, right? Remember, it was there before also, from the bottom to the peak. What can you say? We talked about this before also. So during an expansion stage or during when you're going from the bottom to the peak, this part. What are the characteristics? Increase in actual output, correct. Decrease in inflation, wrong. So I'll cut that answer there. Increase in actual output, correct. Decrease in employment, no, wrong. Increase in actual output, correct. Guys, I'm not talking too much about this because we discussed it in the previous paper. Okay. Increase in actual output, yes. Increase in employment, yes. And inflation, yes. So there is a increase in actual output, increase in employment, and increase in inflation. That part is correct. The answer number 3. Then increase in potential output, decrease in inflation. This part cut off. Increase in actual output, okay. Increase in potential output, somewhat okay. Decrease in inflation, wrong. Therefore, that's also wrong. So therefore, we can go with answer number 3. Guys, can you see? It's the same question repeated now in a different way, no? Yes, unemployment falls. But here they are not saying unemployment because here they're saying employment. Employment is the opposite of unemployment. So employment rises, more and more people get jobs. Yeah. 5 is wrong because you can't say decrease in inflation. It's an increase in inflation, right? During this. Okay. Anything else? We usually don't talk about a potential output, right? But one thing that you can say is now this potential output is upward sloping, guys. So with time, potential output will increase. So therefore, what you can say is, you can say to some extent, but it's not most correct, but safe. Rather than saying decrease in potential output, given that potential output has an upward slope, you can somewhat say that. Why inflation is increasing, I think I explained that over here, right? Why does inflation increase, guys, during the expansion stage? It's because the aggregate demand increases. The people are willing to spend more and more. That's why the output increases. So people are willing to spend more and more. Aggregate demand increases means unit number 7 we have learned, right? In unit number 7, you all learn demand pull inflation. When the aggregate demand in the economy goes up, what happens? Prices start to go up, right? Remember, you have the aggregate demand curve, aggregate supply curve, and then when the aggregate demand increases, AD, right? When this shifts, what happens? The prices in the economy starts to rise. That's why the prices go up. Is that okay, guys? Fine. Question 22, answer number 3. Yeah. Okay. Moving to the next. Okay. The national income data of a hypothetical economy is given below. All figures are in millions. Private consumption, investment, government spending, exports, GDP. Ayo. What is the value of the trade balance in this economy? Now, which approach is this? If you can't figure out the approach, disappointing. Which approach is this? This is the expenditure approach. What are they asking you to calculate? The net export. Okay. So we'll calculate. So in the expenditure approach, what do you have? Private consumption plus government consumption plus investment plus net export is equal to GDP. So private consumption given 1,200, government purchase given 300, net exports is your trade balance, guys. Okay. Investment is given 400 and net exports. You need to find your trade balance. Trade balance is net exports. Guys, again, remember unit number 10, we learned this as well. You don't have to know unit number 10 to know this. GDP 1920. Yes, can you move things around and tell me how much is net export? How much is net export? Plus 20 or minus 20? Plus 20? Plus? No. So I'm going with the answers in the chat box. That has to be your answer number 3. Then what do we do with this export figure? This 180. What do we do with that? You can ignore that. Not needed, right? So in case they ask you to find imports, how much is the value of imports in this economy? Value of imports. Yes, trade balance means net export. Value of imports. Remember, your trade balance, in other words, your net exports is exports minus imports. Net exports is 20, exports is 180. So how much is your import? Your imports have to be 160, right? That's how you get that. So maybe if they ask you to find imports, then you can use this export number and get it. Otherwise, you can simply ignore that. Is that okay? Fine. Questions? Yeah. Okay. Moving to the next. Question 24. Suppose that the growth of nominal GDP. When you say investment, that's private investment, whereas government investment comes under government purchases. If the government builds a highway or something, that will come under government purchase. Okay, because under government purchase, government expenditure, you have no current and capital expenditure. So government's expenditure will come under government purchase, not under private investment. Okay. Then suppose that the growth of nominal GDP is 13.5%. Inflation is 6%, and the rate of growth of real per capita GDP of the economy. That's what they are asked. How do you figure this out? Yes, I remember some past papers had this question typed wrong. Just check. Okay. Yes, how do we get this? This is not the full question. What's the full question again? I also feel something is wrong, no? What? This is not there, no? The population growth rate. Can you all check? I think I have typed the question wrong. Have they given a population growth rate? Because they're asking for per capita. How much is the population growth rate? 1.2%? Right. So sorry guys, make a small correction in this question. Okay. In your question, I have not typed the question fully properly. I think would have made a mistake. So the additional information, they also have the population growth rate as well. Okay. So that line I think I have missed. So then they are asking the real per capita GDP. Now this question is a very easy one, guys. Okay. What you need to do is this. Let me show you. Now, when they give you percentages, you don't multiply or divide. Now, you all know no? Nominal GDP divided by the GDP deflator, real GDP. Then you will say, sir, nominal GDP 13.5%. I'll divide it by the inflation 6%. Then I'll get real GDP. No. When they give you percentages, no, population has to be 1.2. That's why I said some past papers have it typed wrong. Okay, it's not 12%. Okay, so remember this. From your nominal GDP, right? Nominal GDP growth rate, if you minus, okay, if you minus your inflation rate, you get, right, from the nominal GDP growth rate, if you minus inflation, you get real GDP growth rate. So how much is that in our question? Our nominal GDP growth rate is how much? That is a 13.5%. From this, if I minus the inflation rate of 6%, how much is my real GDP growth? My real GDP growth is a how much? 7.5%. But that is not what they are asking us. For us, they are asking not the real GDP, they are asking real per capita GDP. So from the real GDP growth, if you minus the population growth, okay, you then get the real per capita GDP growth rate. So real GDP growth rate 7.5%, population growth rate 1.2%, then the real per capita GDP growth rate is a 6.3%. Is that okay? Those are the equations. Now, sometimes in your question, they might not ask real per capita. They might stop from here. They might come here. Difference between nominal and real, okay, these are basic theory areas. So the difference between nominal GDP and real GDP is nominal GDP is calculated using the current prices. Real GDP is calculated using the base year prices. Okay. So go back to your theory. I think you should be able, it's there in any theory note, that's there. Real capital means. Real capital? You mean real GDP? Okay, guys, in this question, what if instead of saying population has grown by 1.2%, what if I say population fell by 1.2%? Then what do we do? Now here, I minus the 1.2%, right? Because I said minus the population growth. If the population growth is a negative, then you will minus 1.2%. That means you're adding, right? So be very careful with those, because that's how they might change it in your year. So in your year, they might not give you the same question. They might give the same thing. And why do we deduct the population growth rate? It's like this. Now, for example, I'll just teach you the logic here. Now, what is per capita GDP? Per capita GDP is one person's contribution to the GDP. GDP divided by the mid-year population, you get per capita GDP. So Sri Lanka's per capita GDP is around how much? Around right now it's around 3,400 US dollars. Okay. So now just think, right? Let's say Sri Lanka's real GDP increase, right? Let's say, for example, during a year, our real GDP increased by 10%. Okay. But, right, our population, okay, our population, let's say, increased by 30%. Okay. Can we say that our real per capita GDP also went up? Per capita GDP is the real GDP divided by the population. Now, for example, let's say earlier this is 100 and 100. Okay. Now the real GDP is 110 and the population is 130. Right. So what happens to your per capita GDP figure? Per capita GDP figure becomes lower, right? So if you want to find your real per capita GDP, you have to remove the population effect. Yeah. So that's why the real GDP grows by 7.5%. Population has also grown by 1.2. So that means the real per capita GDP has grown by only 6.3. That's why we deduct it. Is again, this comes from your theory areas, guys. So if you all are a little struggling, that's on your theory side. So go back to your theory notes and try to see that. My people, try to go back to your theory recordings, maybe it should be there. Okay. So which one is our answer then? Answer is 6.3%. Right. Last question, 2014. How do we get the 1.2, guys? I'm hoping you all are in this world. Is I have typed the question wrong, right? So in your past paper, they are giving an additional piece of information that is 1.2% population growth rate. I have typed the question wrong, but in your past paper, it should be correct. Some past papers mistakenly mention this as 12%, but it's not 12%, it's 1.2%. Some past papers are correctly 1.2, but some people put it wrong as well. Okay. Right. Last question for 2014. Suppose that the value of GNP of a particular year at constant prices is higher than the base year. This is due to what? Yes. GNP in the base year, and then you have the GNP in the current year. Okay, so they are saying the value of GNP in a particular year at constant prices. Okay, how do we calculate GNP or GDP? Is what? Now, for example, in the base year, let's say base year is 2013. How do you calculate the GNP? It's the output multiplied by the price. That's the basic, no? That's the basics of how do you calculate. Let's say in the base year, let's say in 2013, right? No, base year doesn't mean real GDP. Okay. Let's say in 2013, we made a output of, let's say, 500 goods, and base year price is 100. So therefore, our GNP in the base year, let's say, is how much? 500, and the 2 zeros, it's 50,000. Let's assume I'm just putting some numbers just to teach you. Then they are saying in the current year, right? In the current year, that is, let's say 2022. What's the question saying? Suppose that the value of GNP at a particular year, that's the current year, at constant prices is higher than the base year. Okay, yes. So this is also output multiplied by price. But here they are saying, right, listen carefully, whatever multiplied by whatever is more than the base year. For example, it is 60,000. Can you tell me how? How can this now? Here in the base year, GNP was 50,000, but they are saying in the current year, it's 60,000. They are asking what could have been the reason here. What could have been the reason, guys? Yes, they are saying constant prices. When they say constant prices, can you change the price? Base year price is 100. Can you change the price here? No, no. When they say constant prices, that means the price here also should be 100. Then how did this output become? How did the GNP become 60,000? Because what went up? Because the output would have increased, right? Do you get the point? The output would have been, for example, the output would have been 600. That's how the real GNP, right, went up. Just think, guys, take some time and think. Now, for this case, you all need to know the basics, right? You need to know the basics about what is GDP, what is GNP, what is base year, what is constant price, what is current price. Those all come from your theory. Okay. So think, they are saying the value of GNP at constant prices. Value of GNP at constant prices means the real GNP is higher than the base year. So I am just saying, let's assume in the base year, the output was 500 units. Let's say the country produced 500 goods. The price of one good was 100. So the base year GNP was 50,000. Okay. In the current year, let's say 2022, they are saying the GNP is higher. So I am just saying, let's say 50,000 became 60,000. We are trying to figure out how that 50 became 60. Now, they are giving you a point here. They are saying GNP at constant prices. What does that mean? Constant prices means base year prices. So that means this year also, when we are calculating GNP, we are using the same price. We are using the same 100. So if the price is still 100, how come this value increased? This value would have increased because the output would have increased. You all agree with me there that the output has gone up. Yes. But the prices couldn't have changed because they are saying constant prices. Questions, problems, issues? Yeah. Think, is that part fine? Others? Now the question comes, So now in this question, you're saying prices have not changed, but in every single answer, there is an increase or a decrease in price. Now see, in every single, now they are saying the constant prices. Constant prices means price can't change from the base year, right? But there are every answer, see a decrease in price, decrease, increase, decrease, increase. Every single answer talks about a increase or a decrease in price. Then how do we figure this out? How do you figure this out? Guys, do you all remember the aggregate demand curve diagram? The AD curve, aggregate demand curve. What are the two axes? One axis is the general price level. This axis is the real GDP, or we call this the output axis. Remember that. Now, according to this, right, now think, if the output was at, let's say earlier, output was 50,000. Now, the output has gone to 60,000. What do you think would have happened to prices? The output, which was 50, went to 60. So now the prices, according to this graph, what should happen? Should have fallen down. Now this MCQ, guys, is a little bit of a tricky MCQ. Now usually these kind of MCQs they give so that the student doesn't get 50 out of 50. Again, every year, 1 or 2 questions in your paper become tricky like this. This is something where you have to think out of the box. Now, usually someone will argue, sir, when it's constant prices, I will also agree. Now, I remember when I was doing A-levels, I also had this problem because I also did A-levels in 2017. So I also would have done the 2014 past paper and gone. So I remember when I was also doing the 2014 past paper, I was also thinking, okay, now if they are saying constant prices, how they are saying the price is decreasing? So how can you say the price is increasing? Price has to be constant because you're calculating GDP at constant price. So that's why the examiner wants you to think a little out of the box now. So he tries to tell you, using these constant prices, you figure out what happens to output. Output is going up. Then use your knowledge on this aggregate demand and things. And then you will figure out when the real output increases, what happens? When the real output increases, prices are falling. So this is something that even when I was doing this paper the first time, I also would have never thought of. So don't worry, right? So there are questions like this here and there that the examiner will throw out of somewhere to make sure you don't get 50 out of 50. That is always there. You or me, we can't avoid. If you're lucky enough during that day to figure out, it's okay. Okay, right. So which one is our answer then? Output is increasing, price is decreasing. We can go with answer number 3. Can someone confirm past paper book also says 3, right? What if I explained everything and the past paper book says something else? I don't know what the answer in the past. Yes, no? Right. Then the logic is correct. Okay, that's question 25. So are you all okay with 2014? How much did you all get right? 1, 2, 3, and 4 questions. 4 out of 4, at least 3 or 2. Even if you got the 25th one wrong, that's okay. You've got the others right, because others are not hard, others are comparatively easy. Apart from my typing mistake here. Okay. Right. Okay, so that's good. We'll move to the next.